What do your children see? Do they see us on our knees consulting God when there's a big decision to be made? Or do they see us frantically running around trying to put out fires, solving our own problems, which just creates more problems? Okay. Do they see us repenting of an ungodly attitude and asking God to change our hearts? Or do they hear us demanding that they change their hearts without teaching them that they can't be their own saviors? Do they see us exuding a peace that surpasses all understanding? Or do they hear us complaining about politics or work or traffic or the weather or the cost of living? While your children are under your care, their relationship with God will only be as strong as your relationship with God. When they go out into the world, will they go out ready and expecting temptation, knowing how to process their circumstances and resist the enemy's tactics? Or will they go out looking for adventure, seeking it out because they're finally free of mom and dad and all that God stuff? Unfortunately, that's the trend we're seeing today. 8 out of 10 Christian teenagers abandon their faith by the end of their freshman year in college. That's because our children know us better than anyone else. Read between the lines, parents. We are failing. That is an 80% failure rate because our children recognize a hypocrite when they see one. We're called bipolar Christians because we act one way at church and we act another way at home. How do we treat the people that are around us at church versus how do we treat our spouse at home in front of our children? The marriage relationship is a foretaste of our eternal relationship with God, with Jesus in heaven. Okay, men, are we treating our wives like Jesus treats us as his bride? Okay, ladies, are you respecting your husbands as you would Christ? How do we treat our children's friends? How do we talk about our friends in front of our children? Why do we go to church? The fact is if we do not demonstrate our love for God and our delight in his commands, then we can expect our children to abandon everything we try to teach them by the time they decide to leave home. That happens pretty early in a lot of cases. They see that our faith doesn't change us. Doesn't change us at all. Therefore, God is irrelevant, and he makes no difference in real life. So is your child part of the 80% or the 20%? Have you seen their Facebook page? Do you know what they're thinking about? Do you know what's important to them? Do you know what they want other people to think about them? You can learn a lot from just reading on Facebook. On the 4th of July, one of your children asked me, "Are you with Edward or Jacob?" I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about? Because I didn't know, so I don't know what you're talking about. Are you with Edward's army or Jacob's army? I'm sorry, I'm not following. What are you talking about? He's like, Twilight. Twilight. Now, parents, what are we letting our children watch? This was a young guy. This wasn't a teenager. This was a little guy, okay? What are we letting our children watch? You remember the little ones that live in our house whose sense of judgment hasn't fully matured yet? Okay, the little ones that God has given to us, has trusted to us, and he's put them in our care. We're supposed to be stewards of these little blessings, these little gifts that God's given us. Are we training them? Are we allowing them to fill their minds and hearts with teenage soap operas about vampires who only drink animal blood because they have a sense of honor and integrity? So I'm thinking through this. Hollywood is now assigning attributes of good, attributes of God, to personifications of evil like vampires and werewolves, and we allow ourselves to be drawn to the nobility of their character. If you want nobility, go back and read about David and Jonathan. There's much better stuff to read in here than what you're going to see on that TV. I kind of like what Phil Downer says about Paul's thorn in the flesh. He says, I'm glad that Paul didn't tell us what his thorn in the flesh was, because then I have to wonder, if Paul struggled with the same thing that I'm struggling with. I'm not going to tell you who I was talking to because you guys need to wonder, is that my kid? Okay. 20% versus 80%, that's I can't get past those numbers. Those are huge. So do you know what your children are watching? Do you know what they're listening to? I guarantee you guys, just because a band is on Tooth and Nail Records does not mean that their lyrics honor and glorify God. Okay? Honestly, a lot of days I'm sitting here pruning out my iTunes, like, cross them off, cross them off, cross them off. You have to know what your children are letting through the gates of their hearts. Okay? You have to protect them. Jordan and Emmanuel, okay, you guys love to skateboard, okay? You guys have a rather large stereotype to overcome. You have to present yourselves blameless, holy, decent, respectful, both honoring and honorable. Let your light shine before men so they see your good works and glorify your Father who's in heaven. Anthony and Eugene, you must raise these boys and help them to become men. You need to do more than tell them. You need to model your love for God with every aspect of your life. They've heard it so many times, they don't want to hear it anymore, they want to see it. I'm just using you guys as an example because I love you and we're pretty close. Phil Downer says it like this: if we were to take an interest in another, offering time and concern rather than a sermon, we would find almost unlimited opportunities for impacting his life, leading him to Christ, and discipling him so that he could become a disciple maker. Men, if we cannot lead our own children into a life-changing relationship with Jesus Christ, what right do we have to teach our church family? Teenagers, 2 weeks ago, they gave you a very cool book, right? How many pages have you read? Okay, let me sum it up for you. Jesus tells us in the Sermon on the Mount that if we look at another with lust, desiring to be with them physically, imagining scenarios, etc., whatever, then we have already committed adultery in our hearts. Young ladies, why do you have pictures of the latest and greatest teenage heartthrobs hanging in your locker or on your bedroom wall? What do these pictures make you think of? What do they make you want? Women, our girls need you to teach them how to be ladies of character, integrity, and purity. Teach them and show them Proverbs 31:10, a wife of noble character. Mothers, when you take your daughters shopping, are you having a hard time finding clothes appropriate for them to wear? You should be. Parents, we have to do better. We have to do better because lives are at stake. The lives of our children and of their children. Parents, you have to do better because my little girl needs a godly man to marry. You follow me? She needs a husband that won't put her through the heartache that I put Anne through while I was playing catch-up. And we must raise our boys to be men of faith after God's heart because they must lead our daughters in the marriage covenant. My little boy will grow up to be a man, and a young lady will need him to be a godly example for her and for their children.